Welcome in to the Bro Force Squad podcast, where we are just a bunch of bros drinking beer, watching TV and movies. I'm your host, the Mayor Jeff Hornacek. This is our review of Black Mirror Season 6. Thank you so much for checking us out. I am joined by our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, and today we're actually going to do this review a little bit differently than we've typically done our TV reviews. We typically review an episode of television using the 4 Bro Force Squad criteria, which is the acting, the story, our favorite scene, and then any theories or questions going forward. But what Cycli and I are going to do today is go over each of the 5 episodes of Season 6 of Black Mirror, and we will still discuss them using some of those categories, but I kind of just want it to be more of an open spoiler discussion. I think that'll be a little bit easier. So, before I turn it over to our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, if you have not seen Black Mirror Season 6, you either clicked on this review on accident or you want it spoiled for you, which I guess go for it. I mean, we don't want you to not listen to us, but it's an interesting choice. If we're going to do these in order. So again, obviously they're anthologies. You can watch them in any sequence. And episode 1, Ronnie, is titled Joan is Awful. Actually, before we get into that, I think this is important context. Coming into season 6 of Black Mirror, I like to do this when we do like horror franchises. Where does the series sit with you? I know it's been, since it is an anthology, it's kind of a grab bag or like a mixed bag every time we get a season because it's not like continuing a narrative. But what are your thoughts on Black Mirror as a whole, as a show, and then specifically maybe like the more recent episodes of it?
Yeah, and if you've heard me on the pod before, love dark shit. Like I love dark elements, horror, things that are semi-based in reality. And I was hooked on Black Mirror from the first episode. When I say the first episode, I really mean that first episode where that prime minister has to fuck the pig. And most people actually recommend not starting with that episode. Or like, hey, if you're recommending Black Mirror for a friend, maybe recommend a different episode because it's quite a starter. But I watched that one first, and I was in. I was like, I got what the vibe of the show was trying to say. Like, there's so much more than, what actually is about fucking the pig. And I remember watching White Bear and the entire history of you and things like that, and just being captivated. And the best thing about Black Mirror, and you and I have talked about this off pod, was when an episode ended, man, you didn't move. You just sat there like, what?
Yeah, it sticks with you.
Yeah, you have to like decompress, you have to analyze, you have to think about it. And so where I was leading up to this, I was like, it's been 4 years, I think, since the last episode. Charlie Brooker, said right now the world was pretty dark with COVID. We didn't need, to add another dark show, right? Like that's where we got the Ted Lassos, the shows that cheered us up. And so he waited a while. And so season 5 had 3 episodes and was probably definitely the weakest of them. So my anticipation was like, we're waiting for 4 years. He's probably got all these ideas built up. So much has happened in the world in 4 years. So I was amped for this season. Did you feel the same?
Definitely. And I think when we saw, no season has been very long, but knowing that we only got 3 episodes last season, I was kind of with you. I was like, I wonder what kind of pitches or like story ideas he's had that he's either been waiting to do or he's just had time to sort of ruminate on and perfect them for season 6. And I think even before we dive into the first episode, Joan is Awful, season 6 to me felt the most un-Black Mirror-like in a lot of ways, and really just tonally kind of all over the place. It almost feels like a sort of an experiment with even for like Black Mirror, which is already kind of an experimental high concept show. This just felt like, when a band releases an album and they're just like totally change their sound, or it's like, who are these guys? This is not the last album I bought.
And who are we to be gatekeepers of what Black Mirror is? I get that argument. Sure. But this one, I mean, there fundamentally for 5 seasons, Black Mirror has, for better or worse, been a show about how modern technology or a near future is going to impact humanity, whether for good or bad. There's been happy episodes, there's been fucked up episodes, sad episodes. This season that we're about to talk about, it's more of a commentary on the human elements and human behavior. Now, is that okay for Charlie Brooker to do? Absolutely, dude. Do whatever. It's your show. But like, to me, that's not what Black Mirror was. Like, you can do an anthology. So again, I'm not trying to gatekeep, but I am saying like I agree with you. This did not feel like Black Mirror.
For sure. All right. Episode 1, Joan is Awful. The plot synopsis, according to IMDb, an average woman is stunned to discover a global streaming platform has launched a prestige TV drama adaptation of her life in which she's portrayed by Hollywood A-lister Selma Hayek. And the cast here, of course, we have Annie Murphy from Schitt's Creek, Selma Hayek, and then it also lists Michael Cera, among others. What did you think
Michael Cera.
of? Yeah, that was like when it really, really hit a meta level that I was not prepared for. What did you think of Joan is Awful?
Yeah, first of all, meta is a perfect word. This is as meta as it gets, right?
And then it gets more meta after it gets
as you
meta.
go, right? So we're spoiling it, right? So I'm sure you've watched it. So right, like first of all, my first thought is, who would want to watch this an average person's day in life, right? Like,
so I think I wrote down like if there was a show about you, I would love to watch it, but I don't want it done about me, obviously. So the people who know Joan,
yeah,
like are getting this sick pleasure out of it, which again I think is the social commentary, but you don't want to see it about yourself, obviously.
Also, is it profitable? But that's neither here nor there. Conceptually, this felt like, of all the episodes, and I'm not saying this was my favorite, but this was the most Black Mirror episode-esque that was provided to us, because it relies on the features of our phones, our smart devices listening to us at all times, right? Like every conversation we're having, anytime you think you're in an intimate moment, anytime you think you have privacy, her seeing her ex-boyfriend, her having to fire a subordinate, and then us again, all of us reading our terms and conditions. I always joke like I do that for a living. I literally read terms and conditions. So when I'm at home, do I do that? Absolutely not. No one does it. And so they're going to get you to agree to, God knows what. So this is a play on technology. This is a very Black Mirror concept. And so it is very layered and extremely meta. I thought Annie Murphy did a really great job. I don't think I've seen her really much in anything other than oh my gosh,
Schitt's Creek.
So it was kind of seen, like she almost looked different. Like, I mean, I get the hair and stuff, but like it was fun to see her play a completely different character.
Yeah, this one, I totally agree. This felt the most Black Mirror to me, and having it be the first episode, I was kind of like geared up for a full season of kind of high concept stuff like this. This one is harrowing in the sense that I think of some Black Mirror episodes, you see the technology that it's using to sort of expose like a lot of the warts and flaws of the human condition, but you're like, yeah, but we're probably like 30-40 years away from that. This one, Ronnie, I actually think we're like within 2 or 3 years of something like this being pretty close to happening. Well, not like a full show being created, but like think of the things we can do with AI and deepfakes now. Like auto-generating this does not seem like that far of a cry. I'd be happy.
Not at all. It's absolutely already happening, like especially the unregulated world of Chat GPT and those kind of things, because obviously they're relying on your daily experience. But what a lot of people was kind of undertoned in the show was the show itself exaggerated, right? Where you're seeing Annie Murphy's Joan, kiss her boyfriend, immediately back off and be like, I can't be here, and leave. And then Selma Hayek's Joan like makes out with him, right? Like they're exaggerating points. So, I know a lot of people online say like, well, if a show is being made about you and you want it to stop, just sit on the couch and be as boring as possible. But with modern AI technology and Chat GPT and that kind of stuff, they would have just exaggerated things.
Absolutely,
they would have made it a show. And so at what point, why she has to take the drastic measures of taking a shit during a wedding, like that's the concept, that like you can just plug into anything and AI is going to go off of it, and the CGI is going to be able to animate anything, and like you said, deep fakes. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and the moment at the end where it gets like I got a little bit confused at like the meta level where it was like Kate Annie Murphy. Yeah, that part was funny. Where like Annie Murphy is actually the Selma Hayek in real life, and then there's the Joan below her who's just like the plain Jane. But this one was interesting, and again made me think, which is what I want a Black Mirror episode to do. Definitely not as dark as some of the better episodes, but the concept of it is still like hits close enough to home and feels realistic enough to where like it's scary in like sort of the non-traditional way, where it's like not a jump scare, like you're worried for your life, but it's like, holy shit, like that's a reality that we're very, very close, if not already in. And like people would eat this shit up, which is, I think, kind of exploitation is sort of the theme of this season. if there is one across the 5 episodes. And this was an interesting look at it through like the profit of a streaming company using your likeness, similar to the South Park episode with the human sent iPad.
Well, and they make a point to it. They're like, it's not no one's wanting to watch a happy show like about your life, right? Like they want to see the misery and someone completely fall and collapse. And also the infinite universes that create this, right? Like who's Kate Blanchett's Joan and so on and so forth. Like at what level, like you can keep going forever. So it was a fascinating concept. I really did think about, like, for a little bit wonder what was going on. You know, there's a scene where Eddie Murphy's Joan is in therapy and she's going, I just feel like I'm not making any decisions. Like life is just happening to me. Right. Like, so there are a little bit of hints that like she's not actually the Joan. Right. And like when she actually takes the axe to the machine and destroys it, she's like, oh, the decision's made. I can't stop it. Like she has to do it. I really liked it in terms of just like but to me this was an intro, like you said. It made me excited about what was to come for the season. I was like, solid first episode. Where is it on the Black Mirror hierarchy? Probably top half for sure. But that's where I was like, all right, that was just the taste of season 6.
And another thing, maybe just because I like watched a lot of recap videos for this season in particular, but the elements in terms of Easter eggs in this season of Black Mirror, I feel like we're really ratcheted up. Like the Streamberry service that they're on, which obviously is like an allegory for Netflix. All throughout that, like the digital interface of it, it's all just Black Mirror episode Easter eggs, like littered all over the place, which I thought was really cool. I'm very confused about, and I don't need it explained to me, but just like, what is this universe? Like, what are canonical? And it doesn't have to be anything, but like they reference some things in like in news articles that are real, and then other things are like drama shows that they're able to watch and stuff, like media.
Did you notice when Annie Murphy's Joan and her boyfriend are watching Streamberry and they're like trying to figure out what to watch? They go, oh, Loch Henry. That's about those murders, the murders in Scotland. And like I'm not thinking about anything. The very next episode is Loch Henry. So
and I think Beyond the Sea episode 3 was one of the titles too.
Oh, was it? Oh,
and the guy from Will Poulter's character from Bandersnatch was on one of the things.
Yeah, I think I saw that one too. Yeah, but like I said, my last point on this was like, I don't know necessarily that an average user would want to watch a day-to-day life of another average user, but the market with how ChatGPT with the CGI deep fakes and that kind of thing, how easy it makes it, Netflix or Streamberry or whatever you want to call it, can do millions of these immediately and release them. So maybe I'm not going to watch random Joe Blows like you said. I'm going to watch yours and like be like, oh wow, fucking Jeff. Yeah. So it's pretty scary that can do that to your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anything else on episode 1? Joan is awful.
Nah, Joan was not awful.
All right, moving on to episode 2, titled Loch Henry. The plot synopsis is: a young couple travel to a sleepy Scottish town to start work on a genteel nature documentary, but find themselves drawn to a juicy local story involving shocking evidence of the past. Not to take your thunder, Cycly, but I think this was my favorite episode of the season. I did not at all see where it was going in terms of like the twist in it. But having said that, it just felt like a thriller / horror anthology show. And I did not really feel like in the vein of Black Mirror. I know the technology used, you could say it's done through the stuff that they used to make the documentary, and obviously the mirror being shined on society is how exploitative true crime docs can be, and how we just gobble them up because we love seeing other people's misery and are desensitized to them. And so that part was interesting to me, but I don't know if it's fair to knock maybe it's more on the season than this episode, but I love this episode. It just did not feel very Black Mirror to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's where I'm torn, right? Like, this is my favorite episode too, but just as an episode that provides entertainment. And I mean, again, Charlie Brooker can do whatever he wants. If that's all you're going for, then that's great. But it does. If I watched it blindly, if you're like, hey, go type in Loch Henry into Netflix and just hit play and don't look at like, I missed the opening credit. This is Black Mirror. If it had ended, I would have not. And you're like, oh, guess what show that is? I would have never said Black Mirror, right? There was that. There's nothing about it is there technology in it? Yes, in the sense that there's technology in any movie that takes place in modern times.
Right.
Um, but but yeah, if you want to talk about pure entertainment value, it was exactly what someone like me loves in a thriller, a dark murder story, a crime, a true crime document enthusiast, that kind of thing. So yeah, I remember halfway through the episode looking to my wife and being like, I don't. I mean, unless there's a twist, like, and not the twist that we got, but like, unless there's some sort of technology we're missing, like, I don't understand
Right.
what this has to do with Black Mirror.
This would have been like a really good feature length movie. I
Yeah.
think there's lots of like you could really flesh out and like build the tension of them like investigating this disappearance a lot more. Like you could add 20 minutes onto that and all of a sudden we're at an hour 20 minutes, you know, we're almost at a film. So I feel like this would have been an awesome movie, one that you and I would have probably gone and seen in theaters and fucking loved.
Yeah.
Just as a Black Mirror episode and sort of like making us fearful of like where society is headed with our abundance of technology. Again, I feel like we're repeating the same thing. Like, well, if there's not technology, then it's not Black Mirror, and that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm saying that the fear in Black Mirror comes from like us looking at humanity and being like, damn, we do some fucked up shit. And while that's present here, the way that it like displays that in the story of this is not necessarily unique in any way. Like there are movies that have done this.
Yeah.
The twist in this was interesting, but it's like what's new here, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand why Charlie Brooker couldn't have just made this a movie. Because you're right, we could have gotten even more depth into the killings. It could have been much darker. Like this would have worked. And like when the twist happened, you know, when we find out the mom was, oh my God, that was a creepy scene when she's watching the VHS and the mom comes in with the mask and the drill.
That like haunts me.
Yeah, that was.
And the fact that
well
mask
done.
was hanging up in her fucking living room.
Yeah, just open to everyone. Yeah.
Well, I texted you too. I was like, the cockiness of this woman, and I don't know if she taped over them all, but her fucking snuff films are just sitting in her living room.
Oh yeah. Well, she knows no one's gonna watch them. So
Yeah.
like, but yeah, I thought okay, maybe I don't know if you agree with me or this. I feel like Black Mirror episodes that take place in Britain or just the United Kingdom are grimier and darker and a little more intriguing to me. I don't know why the ones that take place in America, I am usually a little less interested in.
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes it's different, like USS Callister, I really love, but like it's just like I felt like I was like even though the tone ended up being or the technology ended up being different, like the tone felt like this felt like more like Black Mirror. The characters not being famous,
Yeah,
again,
I like that element of it too.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Awesome performances in this one also.
Yes. I loved. I mean, the bro at the bar friend. At first, I was a little suspicious of him, but I loved.
Yeah.
But how profitable it was to the community, right? Like he admitted it from the beginning. He's like, let's do a documentary, get tourists back in here, and he's celebrating when the bar is full and everyone's wearing those masks. That absolutely happens. I mean, like I didn't watch it, but Netflix got a lot of shit for the Dahmer documentary, right? Like because his victims are still here and dealing with it, and they beg people like, hey, we're real, like this hurts us.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls his friend to say, we did it, congratulations. And his friend lost his parents, his girlfriend,
and they're like celebrating at his bar
with the masks.
Yeah, that which Scream does a good job of that too, where it's like we're glorifying this and glamorizing it, but like think about like what the symbolism behind that mask is. It's fucking murder and torture. Yep. So that we're pretty fucked up because we'll latch onto anything as a social media trend or a social trend.
Yeah.
One thing I do think that this did that is like a staple of a solid Black Mirror episode is like a very closing shot or like a sequence that just like, damn, bro, that's fucking dark. Do you remember the last scene of this when he's Davis is the guy who directed the film, whose mom was the murderer, is sitting in his hotel room by himself with the champagne?
Yeah.
And he has that note that what did the note say again that his mom left?
For your film.
Oh God. And it was what she wrote when she killed herself.
But it's and someone commented this online, so it's not an original thought, but like what's even more fucked up. So not only did this guy obviously find out his dad was a murderer, find out his mom was a murderer, lost his girlfriend, but then theoretically what probably happened was another film company came in and filmed a documentary involving him because he was so involved, or like they basically, it wasn't even his film anymore. It was a film about him. And so like not only that, they took his film. So it's a pretty fucked up look at like what happens when you're actually the one involved.
The only solace I'll take is it'll be like, like an actor in Hollywood. So now, because of the success of this, maybe he can finance that Eggman documentary that he wants to make.
Which I was intrigued about. I was like, I want more about this Eggman.
I'm like, go on, sell me hard.
I love the performances. The mother was creepy the whole time, but you like the subtle racist vibes of a small town in Scotland, like not overtly cruel racism, just surface level mentions about the girlfriend.
So subtextual that they almost don't even realize how racist it is.
Exactly. Like it just felt very real. Like everything about the episode felt authentic. And I think that's why it ended up being my favorite, a slight favorite over Jonah's Awful. And so, it's hard though, for me, to be honest with you, to now rank this one in the Black Mirror universe, because I believe this was a better episode than Jonah's Awful. But when I think about my favorite Black Mirror episodes, it's hard for me to call this compare this to these episodes that shocked me the way Black Mirror does.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, I would almost rank it under Jonah's Awful, even though I liked it more, if that makes any sense.
No, I see that, because I think the reason that we like Black Mirror is we get so few episodes of them, because every one of them has such a unique take on the horrors and the warts and the flaws of human beings through the lens of some technology we've never seen. That this one, although it definitely showed an ugly side of humanity, it didn't really present. It was well put together, terrifically acted, and a solid script, but it didn't present it in a way that is unique to the Black Mirror universe, I feel like, which is the one advantage these things, they don't have 20 episode seasons because they can't.
Exactly.
One last thing I want to say before we move on, and I can't even really describe the way that this just the uneasy feeling this gave me, but the scene you were describing, Pia, when she's looking at the tapes and discovers that they are the snuff films linking Miss McCardle to the murders. And it cuts back to Miss McCardle cooking that shepherd's pie. It just the way she was rubbing the potatoes on it just made me so uneasy, and kind of my skin started crawling. And that was just such a genius way that they sort of combined those the ethereal feeling of I'm in the house of a murderer, and then she's cooking something. It just felt like it was a human body she was cooking. It wasn't.
I always love it's easy to say because this isn't the first movie that's done this trope of realizing you're with the killer when Silence of the Lambs did that, right, all these people, there's a ton that you realize with the killer, and then you're just play it cool,
I know.
Your shepherd's pie, don't freak out.
I say that, but if I was in that situation, right, I'd fucking lose it.
That's what I'm saying. It's easy for me to be Jess, you're cool, just cool, calm down.
Damn, lady, be cool, as Taylor would say.
But how would I be in that situation? I hope I never find out.
Sorry, I know I said one last thing before, but did you think it was a little just kind of cheap the way Pia died, tripping over a rock in the water?
A little bit, but they made they alluded to it.
Yeah,
people can. It's a possible way to die. That's for damn sure.
Yeah,
slippery rock in the river. But yeah, is it cheap a little bit? But I definitely get what they're saying. People go missing all the time in those areas because it's so easy to.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Loch Henry?
I thought Pia could have taken the older mother too, so I don't know why she was trying to hide.
Yeah, what are we afraid of that woman for?
Yeah, so
it would destroy her.
But no, it was a very good episode. I am interested. I'm not sure what my rewatchability on this one is either, so it will be interesting to see reevaluate maybe if season 7 ever comes out. Talk about this one again.
Yeah, I did watch a YouTube video that did a bunch of Easter eggs, and there are quite a few things that sort of foreshadow the reveal of Miss McCardle being a murderer that are in the episode that might be kind of fun to go back and look for. All right, episode 3 is called Beyond the Sea, and the plot synopsis is: in an alternative 1969, 2 men on a perilous high-tech mission wrestle with the consequences of an unimaginable tragedy. This one probably had the best cast of any of these episodes, because this would have been and it should have been a feature film based on the length. But Aaron Paul, Josh Hartnett, and Kate Mara, and of course the premise here, cyclically, 2 astronauts are on a several month long mission, and the technology that we have allows
several years, right?
Yes, maybe something like that. The point is that it's
Yeah.
So long that they need to be able to basically visit their families, to basically link their consciousness into a sort of like an android back home on Earth that looks exactly like them and be with their families. And things get dark when Josh Hartnett's family and his android are murdered by a cult of a few people who believe that their technology is an affront to God. And Josh Hartnett's character sort of starts to spiral out of control on the space shuttle. So what did you think of Beyond the Sea?
So this, again, we do get a little Black Mirror element of technology. But now the technology is kind of weird because we're going back in time.
Yeah, why is this set in 1969?
Yeah, why couldn't you have done this in
for the cult angle?
2039? I mean,
Right.
you could have you could have easily done this for like a mission that, like, if the concept of the mission is how long humans can be in space for, why not do it in 15 years from now? Like, I don't
get it.
Anyway, that was my one thing about the technology. There is technology in this one, the linking between an android body. Everyone I don't know if you read a lot online. Everyone's like, oh, why can't they just have themselves be on Earth and link themselves up to the ship?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I was
I
wondering
get that,
too.
but like, the point of the mission is to test it on the human body. So I think everyone who's acting like that's a flaw in this, I disagree. I think the point is
that's on me then. So the point of the mission is to test what the rigors of space do to a human body.
I think they're trying to see how long, because the way I interpreted it was like it was a 4 or 5 year mission, and it was just them wasting time on the ship. Like,
that's why they had to do all the physicals and everything.
Yeah, like seeing how their body kept up. And so, like, I think that's
so
why
I missed that. So that makes much more sense.
Yeah. And so that's why I was just like, I don't think that's now is this one of my favorite episodes? No. This is probably my third favorite episode. Second in terms of the Black Mirror-esque vibe. I really liked the concept. It was predictable. I really liked where they were going with
very
Josh Hartnett's
predictable
character.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, first of all, Josh Hartnett, man. I seriously, I'm not even joking. When you told me Josh Hartnett was in this, I was like, I sent you the Obi-Wan meme. I'm like, I have not heard that name.
That's a name I have not heard in quite some time.
I was like, what has he been up to? I didn't even realize. I mean, good for him. So I mean, cool cast. Like the concept. I mean, it's a very feasible thing, right? Like, what if something happens to anyone's family? Did it have to be a cult? Could have been a car wreck. Could have been whatever. That would fuck with anyone's mind, and to see how that would.
And to have it happen while it's a weird, like, emotional state to be in. Like, he's disconnected from them and can't get to them in space, but also he was there when it happened, in like in a weird way.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the cult element brought to it, because, like I said, if let's say they had gotten in a horrible car wreck or drunk driver hit them on their way back from the movies,
right?
His AI conscious is still watching them die and suffer, and he can't do anything, right? Like, it still fucks him up, because they never allude to the cult ever again.
And they're just shown in like a newspaper article or something.
And I also struggle to say, like, why wasn't NASA or the government giving them any sense of security? So
yeah, that's weird.
I just felt like the cult element felt a little cheap. Maybe they're going for Manson or something, but
I feel like in the writer's room, they were like, how do we kill this fucking family in a way that really fucks up Josh Hartnett's character?
Yeah. I mean, any way they die is going to fuck them up, in my opinion. So, but yeah, I did like the episode in terms of just like what it was trying to sell. I'm not big on the ending though.
Yeah, although the ending does kind of posit an interesting question. Like, if you are Cliff and you you realize that David has killed your family, what do you do? Like, you're basically stuck on this spaceship with him. Do you kill him?
Yeah, absolutely, I would. Okay. Like, I don't know, is it a debate?
I feel like the debate online was like the dilemma being, if you kill him, then you're on the spaceship alone. But I'd be Wouldn't you rather be alone than with the guy who killed your family?
Yeah. Really, and Josh Hartnett's like pushes out the chair, like, oh, we're even. Like, Aaron Paul's like, you're right. In retrospect, I shouldn't have gotten mad at you for trying to fuck my wife.
Yeah, but two things for me with this one: interesting idea, great cast. Way too long.
Yeah, 20 minutes. Easy.
20 minutes too long of an episode here. And you can cut a lot of that time out, I think, in the beginning. Like, this is a pretty basic premise to establish, especially for a Black Mirror viewer. Yeah. Like, they treat us with a lot of respect as an audience, which I appreciate. Astronauts can link into their consciousness on Earth. I get it. That they took, like, probably 20 plus minutes explaining that concept. And I get that we want to see Josh Hartnett with his family to feel that loss a little bit more. But when it's already a movie length, we got to fucking cut that down in some areas. And then the other thing, like you said, once Josh Hartnett's family dies, I could have pretty much predicted the whole rest of the ending. The only thing I probably wouldn't have seen is Hartnett's character, David murdering Cliff's family. But I said Cliff is going to let David use his android, and he's going to get obsessed with it, or like obsessed with his life.
I would have been fine with it had it fallen a little predictability with him getting obsessed with his life and his wife, but like tricking the wife eventually, like building up Aaron Paul's behaviors and like things like that to where the wife doesn't even like. I was waiting for a fucking creepy scene and we never got it, where Josh Hartnett is in Aaron Paul's body and the wife thinks it's Aaron Paul.
Yeah.
Why didn't we get that?
I know. There's like a lot of...
And how creepy would that have made you feel? Like having Josh Hartnett touch her or something like that when she doesn't realize it's him. Fucking hair is on the back of my neck standing up, right? Like, I'm like, I was ready for it. Was it predictable to think that? Yeah, but that was like, that would have been good. I think this episode's kind of why it weighs down on me in terms of how I feel about it is because there was a lot of potential with it. It did not hit its mark with the story. Like it had so much going for it.
Yeah, and I think with a length like this, you have such a longer runway to build that tension. Like showing, again, when he's like, he basically makes the painting, he falls in love with her, and then he like snaps the next day. It would have been, like you said, more interesting if he had like slowly shown that progression and like sort of weaseled his way into their lives.
Where she's starting to wonder. I was like, why didn't Aaron Paul come up with a passcode with him so he knows?
Ooh, that would have been cool.
She knows. Like, I just think like this. I just think they like it could have been so much more, and I think that's why I don't. This one isn't as highly regarded. I think this was the one that like Charlie Brooker went for like a home run considering the cast and the length.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I was like, dude, you missed it because that home run was open and you swung too fast.
Just for the sake of this review, to just kind of air some of my grievances, I liked all of the first 3 episodes to varying degrees. What would have really been awesome for me is if the length of this episode was used for Lock Henry and vice versa.
Yeah.
I think that both of the episodes would have benefited from that. But incredible cast, and they were all awesome. I mean, Josh Hartnett, I hope he gets the Harvey Dent role in the Batman sequel, because I don't know why. I fucking love this guy. He's back, baby.
Yeah, I would. Absolutely.
All right, anything else on Beyond the Sea?
No, good performances, though. I mean, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, incredibly strong cast, too. For one. Usually you get like one of these actors in a Black Mirror episode. We got 3.
Yeah.
Altogether, which is cool. All right, I think shit's about to get crazy here, cycling. We'll move on to episode 4, Maisie Day. And the plot synopsis is: a troubled starlet is dogged by invasive paparazzi while dealing with the consequences of a hit-and-run accident. This one stars Zazie Beetz from Joker and Deadpool 2 as a paparazzi who is sort of having a bit of a second guess or like a crisis in her life about the some of the failings of her profession and how it sort of ruins people's lives just to get their photos in terms of celebrities. And then we follow a celebrity named Maisie Day, the titular character, played by Clara Rugard, who has a hit and run accident on set while in the Czech Republic. And she starts to experience some trauma and has to come home and basically like relapses or starts doing drugs and alcohol. And then is the sort of prize jewel of the paparazzi if anyone can get a photo of her. So what did you think of Maisie Day? And let me just say this as a jumping off point. Another thing, like, why was this set in like 2003? Like, what about this?
Was he going for every decade this season? Like the last like 5 decades? Like, because we got 60s, 70s, we got.
And for the last one, Demon 79, I get, I guess, like politically why that was set then. But for all the other ones, I'm just like, I don't really understand. Do you just like want to do it?
God, this one is tough, right? Like, it's definitely in the bottom 5 of Black Mirror, if not bottom 2.
Yeah.
And not saying anything like negative in terms of the performances. It's really about like the concept of the episode. I mean, my wife about halfway through, we were both like, I don't really feel like this is entertaining. I feel bored. I feel like it was just like I just wasn't intrigued the way I should be. Again, I'm sitting, and I think we have to talk about this too. We're now in episode 4 of 5. That feeling I had after Joan of Awful is saying, "Okay, Black Mirror is back. Oh, how deep? What concepts are we getting?" Now I'm starting to realize, wait a second, 2 and 3 didn't really have that, and now 4 is set in the 90s and it's about paparazzi, and I'm like, oh no, like we're not going to get this at all.
Well, and then even more so than that, and one of my notes is like it veered completely, like the twist at the end where she's a werewolf. Dude, you and I love horror movies. The Wolfman is in my top 200 with Benicio del Toro. But like, what the fuck? I get it's a metaphor, quote unquote, but like, dude, come on, Black Mirror, you're better than that shit.
Dude, like, I mean, come on. Yeah, no, I laughed. Like, I'm not joking. I literally think I said, you have to be kidding. You got to be kidding.
Yeah.
Me. And I get, yeah, like you said, I get the metaphor, right? Like, how paparazzi look at humans, how our obsession with this kind of stuff, like,
and like as she's transforming, all they care about is getting photos of it. Yeah, and like none of it's lost on.
She's suffering. Me. Yeah, that dude, we don't need to be. We get it. Like, I just don't. There's one thing I will say I liked about this movie, this show, this episode. The very last scene where she says, "Just shoot me," and she shoots her with her camera.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That was, you know, she still, even though she seems to be the good person, this, you know, like at heart, like when Maisie Day was tied up, she was trying to untie her. She was telling them to stop taking pictures. She was trying to help her. Even at that last moment, she's like, "Nah, I'm gonna get a picture." Like, and again, this is a commentary on the human element, the metaphor of it turning into a werewolf, that kind of thing.
Of how we're sick fucks. Yeah.
Right. Like, I get that. But again, not trying to be a gatekeeper. That's not what I signed up for Black Mirror for. Maybe if that's what it wants to be, that's fine. I'm not even saying this would be, if I was expecting an anthology show like this, like, fine, I could have made fun of it or liked it. Like, even removing that, this wasn't Black Mirror by any means.
Right, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here. You had mentioned, I think it was off pod. If it was in the beginning, I apologize for being redundant for our listeners. But Red Mirror, which is what the very last episode, Demon 79, is, which is essentially an anthology series that exists, again, playing to the meta element within the Black Mirror universe. If they come out with that and it's like genre and horror anthologies, I'll be right there. I'll be the first person firing that shit up the second it drops on Netflix. But like a Black Mirror episode to me, and I get that it's very metaphorical and allegorical and like everything on screen represents something else. But let's look at this for like really what it is, right? We can get Black Mirror's dick out of our mouth for 1 second and be objective. This is a 43-minute short or an anthology series about how exploitative the paparazzi is, and then at the end, the person they're shooting turns into a fucking werewolf. That's what it is. Okay. Yeah. So I get the metaphor involved in all of it, but like, I think I told you in text, I was like, what are the pitches that Charlie Brooker had that he turned down to write this episode? Because this feels like when you're like doing your seasons, like on the writer's room, you're like, well, the werewolf one's not going to get made. We're going to toss that out.
Oh, definitely not that one.
Right.
Finds it in the trash 2 years later. Like, oh wait, why wouldn't we?
What about? This one?
Again, it's just, I think that's what was kind of lost on me. And there's things online about Charlie Brooker has said, like, his concept on the world changed since he had a kid and things like that. And like, he doesn't look at this dark lens anymore. And good for him. Like I said, it is his show. It's just, and if you're watching.
But if you're not cynical anymore, like we need someone else who is to be like writing these.
If you're watching a sitcom, Friends, How I Met Your Mother, whatever, and then season 8, all of a sudden they're like, and now we're going to be a murder mystery. And you're like, I mean, that's fine. I like murder mysteries, but like, I wasn't, wanting this necessarily.
I mean, let's just say it, Cycly. We don't watch this show to feel good. We watch this show. No. It's supposed to be genius, cynical, and morose. That's what Black Mirror has to be. And while this episode, I think, checks a few of those boxes, there's basically what it is just like, people suck, we are animals, and we will do anything for a cheap buck, which is a message that isn't, doesn't fall on deaf ears, but there's no idea here that warrants a Black Mirror episode.
And I get it. Like, White Bear, humans viewing a criminal and like enjoying off of suffering and torture. That's a like Black Mirror has human conceptual elements to it. I get that, but there's also like combined with where our society can go, but for safeguards. That's not what this is. Like that, like
No.
Black Mirror always felt like a warning, in a weird way. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever watch this one again. Like I've watched most Black Mirrors at least twice. I mean, thank God it's short.
Right. Last thing I'll say. So, what was your investment level or your interest level up until the point when she turned into the werewolf?
I was interested the whole time. I wasn't like looking at my phone.
Yeah, I
was just
wasn't
like
bored with this
I wasn't
one.
bored. I was like waiting for something, like I was missing something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seriously thinking the second she was turning into a werewolf, I was like, oh, this is going to be something else. And I was like, oh, no, she's actually doing it. And that's where I lost it. Like, I mean, I wasn't saying even before that I wasn't liking the episode. But God, that's where my investment was just like, I'm going to make it through it. It's 40 minutes.
Yeah. I just didn't think Black Mirror would go like straight genre. And so when it did that, and I was like, that's where this, sort of spins on its head.
Yep.
Interesting. All right. Anything else about Maisie Day?
No, I think it's consensusly the worst one. Internet's always divisive and people have their opinions. For the few things I've seen on Reddit and on Twitter and online, this has like been time over time the worst one. Like I don't think I've seen anyone be like, actually, I really liked Maisie Day.
It has a 5.3 out of 10 on IMDb.
Yeah, it's not good.
Which is the worst. All right, moving on to the last episode 5, called Demon 79. The plot synopsis is Northern England, 1979. A meek sales assistant is told she must commit terrible acts to prevent disaster. So this one, at least for me, cast of unknowns. And the premise is that a woman named Nita, who works at a shoe store in Northern Ireland, basically she's been stepped on her whole life. She recently lost her mother. She meets by way of summoning him through a talisman, a demon named Gap, who tells her that she must kill 3 people in the next 3 days to prevent the apocalypse, or basically hell on Earth. Cycling, what did you think of Demon 79?
Yeah, I think I like this one more than you, but only because by the time you had watched it first and kind of were like, this again has nothing to do with technology, and I was so desensitized by this 5th episode in terms of realizing I'm not getting Black Mirror anymore, or what I'm expecting from Black Mirror. I was able to sit and actually enjoy this episode in terms of it just being an entertaining hour. Like the performances were like, I mean, the second the demon, she picks up that like domino and the demon starts talking, that's where I was like, okay, well, clearly they've given up on Black Mirror. Like it's not a technology, like, a scientific domino. This is a literal demon talking. So I was like, you know what? Take Black Mirror out, throw it out the window. It was silly. It had comedic elements. It was definitely comedy, horror. Again, I'm trying to take out Black Mirror here. I thought the guy who played Gap was funny. I like the look they gave him. I think the way they went about their relationship, how horrifying she was about murder, and where she was on day 3 about committing murder. That was a cool human element to see about like that evolution. It was entertaining, and it had good performances. I felt for the main character, maybe just because I get like being a minority or things like that. Seeing what she was going through and how awful her coworker was and all that kind of stuff. So like,
God, she sucked.
Oh my God.
And her boss too.
Oh, the boss, everyone. Yeah. And I enjoyed the political element. I enjoyed the historical part of it. I'm just going to say the same thing. I liked it obviously a lot more than Maisie Day. It wasn't Black Mirror. I get that it's Red Mirror, whatever the fuck that is, but it's not Black Mirror. It's not what I signed up for. But if I can take away Lock Henry and enjoy that one in a very different way, where Lock Henry was dark and this one has dark elements, but it was entertaining because I had low expectations at this point.
Yeah. So I promise that for this episode, I've beaten it to death. I'm not going to reference how this didn't feel like a Black Mirror episode to me as part of my critique. So you and I think it's weird. We differ in a lot of ways in how we feel about this episode, but I do agree with some of your points for sure. So the first thing I have to say, and maybe I was just kind of fatigued from like not getting what I wanted from this season in terms of a typical Black Mirror season, but pretty much early on, I found myself pretty uninterested in the character of Nita. I just found her, and I know that the purpose is that she's sort of this meek, feeble person who is sort of pushed to her brink. But I just found her kind of uninteresting. And even when she was like speaking with Gap, I was like kind of checking my phone. It felt kind of slow and methodical. But I do think that the humor elements in this actually worked pretty well. Like as the episode went on, maybe about halfway through, I kind of started to find their dynamic a little bit more entertaining. I still think maybe, again, it's not their fault because shit is produced at all different times. I think Knock at the Cabin did this idea better.
I was going to say the exact same thing. This is Knock at the Cabin just without a demon to.
Right. Knock at the Cabin, and they're basically the same in length. Knock at the Cabin felt much more kinetic. We were moving from beat to beat a lot quicker. There was a lot more urgency in the plot, especially like if you think about the framing device of this, like you have to kill 3 people in X amount of time or the world's going to end. That should feel like it's moving at breakneck speed, or we should feel that tension. And I just never really got that here, which maybe that was kind of the point of Gap, was he was like, he was basically there to like coach her, calm her down. He's like the pitching coach who comes out and he's like, hey, just fucking find the strike zone for you. I will say this, there's parts of this that are very interesting to me in this episode that I almost wish was more of a focal point of the show or of this particular episode than is the end of the world going to happen. And particularly the thing to me that I found really interesting, maybe just because it was so dark, was when Nita had the vision of that politician, Michael Smart. And I kind of got like a V for Vendetta vibe, like if he were to become the prime minister and how oppressive and fascist his rule would become, all the horrible things that would happen in Northern Ireland. That part to me was really fucking interesting. Not so much the whole, and people online, for some reason, some people's minds are blown by this concept, even though it's been done literally dozens of times.
It's not a
unique. What if it was like all in her fucking head, dude? I'm like, if that concept to you is like a novel, then I just watch too much fucking media then, I guess, because that is the most played out idea at the end. Well, was that really the apocalypse or did she imagine it? If that's your pitch to me, then I don't fucking care. That's boring as hell.
Yeah, it literally isn't. And that's how like the point of it to me wasn't, I was questioning like, oh, is it real or is it not? But that wasn't what the point of the show was or the episode was to me. Because
that's not a hook anymore.
No, especially like you said, we went and saw Knock at the Cabin 6 months ago or whatever that was. So it's like, I enjoyed it for its element of, like you said, their relationship, her being like, again, for me, it was more about the human idea of how disgusting she found murder and how she was enthusiastic by the end, and it desensitized her. So like, to me, it wasn't just about like, oh, is it in her head? Is it real? Whatever. Like, take that for what it's worth. If that meant a lot to you and you found that mind blowing, good for you. But like you said, it's been done. So that's not what I got out of it.
Right.
And so like, when it was revealed to be real at the end, I was like, yeah, this is Knock at the Cabin, because that's what happened again. Like,
and honestly, the ending where like the bombs go off and hit, to me, that's like one of the least interesting parts of this. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. It's her process in getting there. And again, I think the pub scene is probably my favorite scene, just because like her internal, I guess it's an internal monologue or dialogue with Gap, and like his ability to like go through and tell the futures of people in the bar, and she's sort of like judge, jury, and executioner now of all these people, when it's like a role she didn't want. That part was kind of fun to think about. And like, even when she goes back to the guy's flat, he's like, yeah, I kind of figured. Like, I'm a shit person.
I was surprised she wasn't questioning more of like, is Gop lying to her or whatever? Like, he's a demon, right? So I'm like, he could be saying whatever. Like when she did the first kill and he was like, oh yeah, he molests his daughter every night.
Yeah, I thought he was full of shit just to get her to kill people.
I told my wife, I go, when the police are at the wife's house for the missing persons, I was like, watch, he won't even have a daughter.
Damn, that would have been interesting. Like, see, that's a more interesting episode to me.
Like where he's just fucking manipulating her.
Yeah.
And even if he's not real, then her conscience is just telling her to kill people, and she's creating these bullshit stories about them. So like, it's easy to kill someone like a child molester and a guy who killed his wife, right? Like,
well, that's how you rationalize it to yourself, right? Yeah.
And by the end, she was so, again, rationalizing all of it for Michael Smart about like saving everyone. And I get it. That was the point. So like, yeah, to me, the fundamental cool things was not is the world actually going to end? But yes, this is very much a Knock at the Cabin, but more comedic and more demony.
There are pieces here that work. Tonally, it was a little bit inconsistent. And again, I hate to keep saying this, man. Like, I sound like an old fart, but like at an hour, 15 minutes, we should be able to shave like 10 minutes off this thing at some point. Like,
or just make a movie and go all in.
Sure. Yeah, I'm with you there.
The hour 10-minute episodes of anything are always weird to me because I'm like, do you want to be a movie or do you want to be a show? Like I'm pretty sure it's the longest Black Mirror is or two of them, White Christmas and Hated the Nation. I fucking love both of them. They are long, but they are movies. They're both over an hour and a half, I think, or they're at an hour and a half. Like, fine, go all in. But like, if you're going an hour, 10 minutes, I feel like you're just in this like no man's land.
And the two long ones in this one, Beyond the Sea and Demon 79, I don't really think justify the runtime. No. You know, like what do you actually need that much?
No, we didn't get any of that. None of that time was like I've always said on the pod. I actually don't mind 3-hour movies if you're giving me 3 hours of needed story.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, any final thoughts on Demon 79?
Yeah, I think it's easy for me to say like I might be more likely to rewatch this later on again, but I will not. In my head, I won't consider Black Mirror. Maybe that was on point. Maybe that's why it's called Red Mirror. But
again, this is a season of Black Mirror, so like that doesn't really work.
It's hard, like call it something else. But it just ended. Even though I was entertained by the episode, it just again confirmed how I had been feeling episode by episode. That maybe Charlie Brooker has gone, his flame has blown on what Black Mirror is. Maybe he's told every story on technology. Maybe it's just getting old to him.
Yeah, but maybe we need some fresh blood here.
Yeah, 4 years in the making. I mean, Charlie Brooker, you go do your other stuff. Go do whatever you want. Just, if you want to call it a day on Black Mirror, then call it a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to say his interest waned in this season, but it definitely seemed like he kind of wants to change what Black Mirror is. And like you said, that could very well be because he's a father now and doesn't see the world as cynically. But you and I aren't parents yet, and we still think the world sucks. And I want you to reaffirm that in Black Mirror for me.
I'm like the first episode of Awful. I don't want to see that happy shit.
For real, yeah. If I want to watch that, I'll put on Paramount Plus and watch the Rugrats. I watch this to feel awful. All right, I guess last thing I want.
It's depressing because now you look at the adults in a different like.
That's true. When Stu is making like easy mac and cheese at 3 a.m. and he hasn't slept in a day and a half, you're like, I fucking get it. Yeah.
When I was looking at Rugrats, I thought those parents were like in their 50s. You're like, no, they're in their early 30s. They're miserable.
Yeah, that's us. There's probably liquor in their coffee every time they walk in the room.
Yep.
All right, Cycly, I know that we've gone a little long here, but again, it's a 5-episode season, and this is a show that usually produces a pretty good discussion. Overall thoughts on season 6. You don't have to like rank it in terms of other Black Mirror seasons, but I think that if this show continues, we will definitively look back and say season 6 was where there was sort of a big paradigm shift or a change in the direction of what it was about.
Yeah. Season 5 to me was the weakest in the sense like, we got 3 episodes, but it was also weird because we got that random Bandersnatch episode, which was like you could make
choose
your own
story,
choose your own adventure. Season 4 had a ton of hits. So like they were back to back. I'm pretty sure season 5 came out quickly. So while I look back and I don't really necessarily like the season 5 episodes, I gave it grace because it had been like, a year or two. This one bothers me the most because we had 4 years. Like so much has happened in this world between COVID, Ukraine, Yemen, like all this kind of shit and the economy, like Chat GPT, like AI, all of it. There was so much here built up. And so for me, this was more disappointing. I don't know necessarily that these episodes are worse than season 5 or not. I just think the expectation I went in with my excitement of season 6 really just kind of leaves me with a like sour note. And I was so ready to have that plug filled by Black Mirror, and it didn't get it. And it's worse for that.
Yeah, I think this, I would probably have to go back and revisit other seasons again just to make sure that this claim holds true. But as far as like a consistent message across 5 anthological, I don't know if that's a word, episodes, this one actually kind of had a rare consistency. Like there was a clear message, I felt like, human exploitation. I thought I was going to sneeze. Damn it. That is clear here across these 5 episodes, but it doesn't feel like it's presenting them in the typical clever and cynical way that Black Mirror does. So I don't want to say it's all over the place, because I actually don't feel like the highs are that high and the lows are that low. It's just kind of like a steady line, but it's just it's like playing in a different league than other Black Mirror seasons. And while I did enjoy it, Black Mirror to me is, because of the high concept, I hold it in like the highest esteem and the upper echelon of television. Whether that's fair or not, it has earned that moniker as like top tier TV. And this season just does not meet that mark. I don't think it's necessarily bad overall, but it's not in the elite conversation that most of the previous seasons of Black Mirror have been in.
I completely agree.
All right. Any last thoughts, Cycle? You ready to let the people go?
No, just hey, if you want to pay $250,000 to go to the bottom of the Atlantic, maybe second guess that desire.
That actually could be the next Black Mirror season. We could have
could easily be.
If he wants to base it on current events. All right, for our legal counsel, Ronnie Cycli, I'm the Mayor, Jeff Hornacek. We are the Bro Force Squad podcast. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. Follow us on Twitter at Bro Force Squad. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words into YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, anywhere you find your podcasts, you will find us there, and you can check out everything that we have ever done on our website, broforcesquad.com. Till next time, Cycling and I have to go plug ourselves into our cyborgs and go back home. We're actually doing this from space. I want to be Josh Hartnett's cyborg.
God damn it. I thought you were going to say we're actually doing this for 13,000 people.